In this video, we'll be talking about website navigation and universal design. There are some key principles for effective navigation to make your navigation accessible to all your users and effective for all your users. And honestly, a lot of these are common sense that you'd really want to do for anyone who's using your website. One is to be consistent with your navigation across each page of the site. And that is pretty easy to do if you just use CSS and apply that to your nav universally and then code nav sections in each of your pages. Next, you want to link to the home page from every page of the site. So, multiple pages, you always want people to be able to get back home. Conventionally, that's done with a linked logo or a backlink or a home link that goes home from every nav section of every page. There are some conventional ways of doing that. Pick one of them, do it. Make the navigation sections distinct from the content, so it should be clear that where the navigation sections are located and that they are navigation sections. Again, easily that's accomplished by using the nav tag, and typically your navigation is going to be located at the top of your page or to the left or right of the page. So again, pick one of those conventional ways of structuring your pages and use that, because users have been trained to look for navigation in those spots. You want to make your link titles meaningful and understandable so people know what they're getting when they click on that link. So if you have several main pages or main sections in your site and you link to all of them from every place on the site, you want to highlight the page that is the current page if it's possible to do that. And honestly, that actually you can do some hand coding to do that, but that's a thing that's more easily accomplished with JavaScript. So that's something that we can code in a different way, a little bit more easily, but you definitely can hand code to highlight the current page if that's necessary. And you want to make your in-page links, your bookmarks, easily recognizable. Conventionally, that means a different color plus an underline. And like we practiced when we were coding the links, it's fine to have that underline disappear in order to make it clear that that's a link and a dynamic element on the page. But you want to keep some kind of visual cue, like an underline, not just color, right? Remember, you don't want to mark differences in meaning only with color, because if you have a colorblind user, that's not effective. So you do want to have some kind of visual cue, and the ubiquitous visual cue for a hyperlink is an underline. So I would recommend keeping that underline, even if you make it disappear for a hover effect. And then you definitely do want to use that bookmark structure on long pages so that users can easily skip to the information that they are interested in. And you want to include that top link, either within each section or a persistent top link that remains on the page like we did in our example pages. Let's just go take a look at those example pages for a second here, just to illustrate some of these elements. Here we have our website that we've made. Notice we do have bookmark links so that you can skip around on the page. We have a top link that you can use. And then I've added this external link to the other page that we've been working on, which again has its own navigation. I'm using the sticky position to keep our navigation on the page even when we jump around so that it's persistent. And I've coded these as nav sections, and I've used a consistent CSS styling on each of the nav sections in this site through the use of that single CSS page that is creating the styling for the nav sections on both of these other pages. The text that I'm using matches up with the headings. That makes these nice and usable. And this one matches up with the heading 1 on the page that it's linking to. So those should be meaningful. Speaking of meaningful links, that's the other topic. So rather than click here or just click here, you want to include a short descriptive phrase. You want to provide useful information about the link. So make it clear if it's an external resource, if it's a downloadable file, indicate the file size and type, those sorts of things. Make sure that's clear. If there's additional information that would be of use to someone who can't see the link, then use the title attribute in the link. So we didn't talk about this explicitly when we were coding, but there is this additional attribute called title that you can use. Now, really, ideally, your descriptive phrase should give all the information that someone needs. But if there is some additional information that isn't appropriate to include in the main page, but you would want to have it for a user who might be using a screen reader, then you can definitely use the title link to accomplish that. And then you also want to separate adjacent links with a non-link printable character. So in other words, by inserting some kind of character to separate those links from each other, it shows clearly where one link ends and the other link begins. So once again, let's go back to our site and just check out a couple of these elements. For example, here, these links that go to a new page, I've indicated that with this little double arrow that this is actually going to a new page instead of being a bookmark on the page. So there's definitely a difference in these types of links. So if you're wondering where I got that double angle character from, I can show you in the code. It is this HTML code that is generating that double angle looking character. And if you want to know where I got that, I got it from this site that actually has a whole bunch of HTML codes for different symbols and navigational elements like arrows of different kinds. And so it gives you the HTML code and entity. So some of them only have a code, and this would work fine too. But I mean, I find the entity easier to remember. So you can use that, and you can even generate these through CSS, which can be useful in different ways as well. So this is a cool resource in order to get some other little visual additional things in your site. And sometimes you really need them, like letters with umlauts or accent marks when you're writing a name or a word from another language. So this is where you could find these special characters that go along with text. And sometimes you really need those when you're dealing, like I said, dealing with other languages. This is a great resource, and I do have a link to this again on our site. So that gives you some principles of website navigation and universal design. Again, the structure itself is important. You want to think that through. And then once you have your structure designed, you want to create a navigation that mirrors it effectively and that uses labels in the navigational links that are going to be clear for a user. And you want to position that navigation in a consistent place on your page and in a place where your user can find it and use it effectively.